I never thought that a simple birthday cake could tear a family apart. But that's exactly what happened on my 55th birthday, when I discovered that the daughter I had raised for 23 years wasn't mine. And the woman who had been calling me mom for all those years? She knew the truth all along. My name is Patricia Williams, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust. Some days I wish I could go back to that morning when I was still blissfully ignorant, when my biggest worry was whether the vanilla frosting on my birthday cake would be sweet enough. But life has a way of forcing you to face truths you never wanted to know. It was a crisp October morning in our small town of Riverside, Illinois. The kind of morning when the air smells like fallen leaves and possibility. I was in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, wiped away countless tears, and celebrated every milestone that mattered. The sunlight streamed through the yellow curtains I'd hung 15 years ago, casting warm patterns on the worn linoleum floor. My husband Robert was already at work. He'd left early for his job at the insurance company, the same job he'd held for 28 years. Robert was the kind of man who believed in routine, in stability, in keeping his promises. We'd built our life together on those principles, or so I thought. I was expecting Sarah, our daughter, to come over for lunch. She lived just across town with her husband Mike and their two little ones, Emma and Jack. At 23, Sarah was everything I could have hoped for in a daughter. She had my stubborn streak, but Robert's gentle heart. She was studying to become a nurse while working part-time at the local elementary school. Watching her grow into such a beautiful, caring woman had been the greatest joy of my life. But that morning, something felt different. There was a tension in the air, like the calm before a thunderstorm. I'd been getting strange phone calls all week. Someone would call, ask for Patricia Williams, and then hang up when I confirmed it was me. At first, I thought it was telemarketers, or wrong numbers. But the calls kept coming. Always at odd hours. Always with that same hesitant voice asking for me specifically. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Sarah was nothing if not punctual, another trait she'd inherited from Robert. But when I opened the door, I could see immediately that something was wrong. Her usually bright blue eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands were shaking as she clutched a manila envelope against her chest. "Mom," she said, and her voice cracked on that single word. "We need to talk." I led her to the living room, the same room where we'd celebrated Christmas mornings, where she'd brought her first boyfriend to meet us, where we'd cried together when her grandfather passed away. The walls were covered with family photos spanning decades. Sarah as a baby in my arms, Sarah's first day of school, Sarah's graduation. A lifetime of memories that suddenly felt fragile, like they might shatter if I looked at them too hard. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, settling into my favorite armchair. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, still clutching that envelope. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I got a letter yesterday. From a woman named Linda Kowalski." The name meant nothing to me, but something cold settled in my stomach. "Who is Linda Kowalski?" "She says." Sarah's voice broke again. "She says she's my biological mother." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt the room start to spin slightly. "That's impossible. Sarah, you know your birth story. You know how much your father and I wanted you, how we tried for years before you were born." But even as I said the words, doubt was creeping in. Because the truth was, I had always wondered. Sarah looked nothing like Robert or me. Where we were both dark-haired and brown-eyed, she was blonde with those striking blue eyes. The doctors had explained it away as recessive genes, family traits skipping generations, and I had believed them because I wanted to believe them. Sarah opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out several sheets of paper. She says there was a mix-up at the hospital, that 2 babies were switched at birth. She says she's been looking for me for 23 years. I reached for the papers, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold them. The letter was typed on legal letterhead. accompanied by what looked like official hospital documents and photographs. My vision blurred as I tried to read the words, but phrases jumped out at me. Riverside General Hospital, the 15th of October, 1998. Baby girl Williams and baby girl Kowalski. This can't be real, I whispered. This has to be some kind of mistake. But Sarah was pulling out more documents. Birth certificates. Medical records. And then, at the bottom of the pile, a photograph that made my heart stop. It showed a woman who looked exactly like Sarah would in 20 years. The same blonde hair, the same blue eyes, the same delicate features. And next to her stood a young woman with dark hair and brown eyes, who looked remarkably like Robert and me. Her name is Jessica, Sarah said quietly. Jessica Kowalski. She's 23 years old, and she's been living in Chicago her whole life. Mom, look at this picture. Look at her. I stared at the photograph, and I felt my entire world crumbling around me. The girl in the picture had my nose, Robert's chin, even the same small scar on her forehead that I had from falling off my bike when I was 7. This stranger looked more like my biological child than the daughter I had raised for 23 years. What does she want? I managed to ask. She wants to meet us. She wants to know if we'd be willing to take a DNA test to confirm everything. Sarah was crying openly now. Mom, what if it's true? What if I'm not really your daughter? The question hung in the air between us like a live wire. What if the child I had loved, protected, worried about, and been so proud of for 23 years, wasn't biologically mine? What if somewhere out there was another young woman, who was actually my flesh and blood, who had grown up with different parents, different values, a completely different life? You will always be my daughter, I said firmly, reaching across to take her hands. No piece of paper, no DNA test, nothing can change that. You're my baby girl, Sarah. You always will be. But even as I said the words, I could feel something shifting inside me. A curiosity I didn't want to acknowledge. A need to know the truth that was stronger than my fear of what that truth might mean. Over the next week, our house became a battlefield of emotions. Robert was furious when Sarah told him about the letter. He wanted to ignore it completely, to pretend it had never happened. This is our family, he kept saying. Sarah is our daughter. End of story. But I couldn't let it go. The questions kept multiplying in my mind. If Sarah wasn't our biological child, where was our real daughter? What kind of life had she lived? Did she know about us? Was she happy? Had we failed her by not finding her sooner? The phone calls increased too. Now I knew they were probably from Linda Kowalski, Sarah's alleged biological mother. Finally, on Thursday evening, I answered one. Mrs. Williams? The voice was hesitant, nervous. This is Linda Kowalski. I think you received my letter. Yes, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, we did. I know this is incredibly difficult. I can't imagine what you're going through. But Mrs. Williams, I've been looking for my daughter for 23 years. I've never stopped hoping that someday I would find her. Hill. There was so much pain in her voice that I found myself feeling sorry for her, even though she was potentially about to destroy my world. How do you know for certain? I asked. I always suspected something was wrong. Jessica, my daughter, the one I brought home from the hospital, she never looked like me or my husband. And there were always these little things that didn't add up. Her blood type didn't match ours. Her medical history didn't make sense with our family genetics. When she turned 18, I finally convinced her to take a DNA test with us. It confirmed what I had feared. She wasn't our biological child. And you've been looking for us all this time. Every single day. I hired private investigators. I filed requests with the hospital. I joined every support group for switched babies I could find. Mrs. Williams, I know this is asking a lot, but would you be willing to meet with us? All of us together? I think we owe it to both girls to know the truth. That night, Robert and I had the biggest fight of our 25-year marriage. He was convinced that meeting these people would only lead to heartbreak. What if Sarah decides she wants to live with them? He asked. What if she chooses them over us? Then we'll have to accept that, I said, though the words felt like glass in my throat. Robert, there's another girl out there who might be our biological daughter. Don't you want to know her? Don't you want to know what happened to the baby I gave birth to? The baby you gave birth to is Sarah, he said stubbornly. The baby we brought home from the hospital. The child we raised. The woman we love. That's our daughter. But what if it's not? I shot back. What if our real daughter has been out there all this time, wondering why her parents never tried to find her? The silence that followed was deafening. We stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd had countless conversations about Sarah's future, about college applications and career choices, and the grandchildren we hoped to have someday. Now we were facing the possibility that none of it was what we thought it was. The meeting was arranged for the following Saturday at a neutral location, a small conference room at the local library. I barely slept the night before. I kept imagining what it would be like to meet the woman who might have raised my biological child, to see the girl who might be my daughter's genetic twin. Sarah was nervous too. She'd spent the week going through old photos, looking for any resemblance to Robert and me that she might have missed. What if I don't feel anything? She asked me that morning. What if I meet this Jessica girl and I don't feel like she's my sister? What if I meet Linda and I don't feel any connection at all? Then we'll deal with that, I told her. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. But I was terrified too. What if I met Jessica and felt an immediate maternal connection? What if I looked at this stranger and somehow knew, in my bones, that she was the baby I had carried for 9 months? How could I reconcile that with the love I felt for Sarah? The library conference room was small and sterile, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look pale and tired. Linda Kowalski was already there when we arrived, sitting next to a young woman who made my heart stop. Jessica was like looking at a photograph of myself at 23. The same dark hair, the same brown eyes, even the same nervous habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was anxious. But it was the way she smiled when she saw Robert that sealed it for me. It was his smile, unmistakably. The same slightly crooked left side, the same way her whole face lit up. This was our biological daughter. I knew it with a certainty that was both thrilling and heartbreaking. The introductions were awkward and painful. Sarah sat next to me, staring at Jessica with a mixture of fascination and fear. Jessica seemed equally overwhelmed, her eyes darting between Robert and me as if she was trying to memorize our faces. I've thought about this moment every day for 5 years, Jessica said quietly. Ever since we found out about the switch. I used to imagine what you would be like, what you would think of me. We think you're beautiful, Robert said, and his voice was thick with emotion. We think you're perfect. Sarah flinched slightly at his words. And I saw Linda notice it too. This was going to be so much harder than any of us had imagined. We talked for 3 hours that day, sharing photos and stories, trying to piece together 23 years of parallel lives. Jessica had grown up in Chicago with Linda and her husband Tom. They'd given her every opportunity, loved her fiercely, never let her doubt that she was wanted and cherished. She was studying art therapy and working with children with disabilities. She was kind, intelligent, creative. Sarah, meanwhile, shared stories about her childhood with us, about family vacations and birthday parties, and the 1,000 small moments that make up a life. I watched Jessica's face as Sarah talked, saw the wistfulness there, the wonder at hearing about a life that might have been hers. But the hardest moment came when Linda asked the question I'd been dreading. Have you thought about what comes next? I mean, how do we all move forward from here? The silence that followed was excruciating. What did come next? How do you reorganize 4 lives that have been built on a foundation that turned out to be false? How do you love 2 daughters when you've only ever had one? How do you share a child you've raised with people who are essentially strangers? I think, Sarah said slowly, I think I need some time to process all of this. This is a lot to take in. Jessica nodded. I feel the same way. I mean, I'm grateful to finally meet you all, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Over the following months, our lives became a complicated dance of emotions and logistics. We arranged regular visits with Jessica and the Kowalskis. Sometimes just the four parents would meet for coffee, trying to navigate the strange reality of sharing children. Sometimes it was just the girls, Sarah and Jessica, tentatively building a relationship that defied easy categorization. I found myself falling in love with Jessica gradually, the way you might fall in love with a place you're visiting for the first time, but know you want to return to. She had Robert's analytical mind and my fierce loyalty to the people she cared about. Watching her interact with her younger cousins, I could see the nurturing instinct that I recognized in myself. But every moment of connection with Jessica felt like a small betrayal of Sarah. And I could see that Sarah was struggling too. She'd always been secure in her place as our only child, the center of our universe. Now she was watching us develop a relationship with another young woman, seeing us light up when Jessica called or visit, wondering if we loved this biological stranger more than we loved her. The breaking point came on Christmas Eve. We'd arranged to spend the afternoon with the Kowalskis and Jessica, and then have our traditional Christmas Eve dinner with just Sarah, Robert, and me. But the afternoon visit went longer than planned, and by the time we got home, Sarah was furious. "You were supposed to be here an hour ago," she said, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "We always open one present on Christmas Eve. We always watch It's a Wonderful Life together. But I guess our traditions don't matter anymore now that you have your real daughter." The words hit me like a slap. "Sarah, that's not fair. You know how much you mean to us." "Do I?" she shot back. "Because lately it feels like you're more interested in getting to know Jessica than in maintaining the relationship you have with me. I see the way you look at her, Mom. I see how excited you get when she calls. You never look at me like that anymore." She was right, and we all knew it. In my eagerness to build a relationship with the daughter I'd never known, I had been neglecting the daughter who had been the center of my world for 23 years. I had been so focused on what I might have missed with Jessica that I was missing what was happening with Sarah right in front of me. "I'm moving to Portland," Sarah announced. "Mike got a job offer there, and we're taking it. I think it would be good for us to have some distance." Portland was 2,000 miles away, far enough that casual visits would be impossible, that grandchildren would grow up barely knowing us, that our relationship would be reduced to phone calls and holiday visits. "Sarah, please," I begged. "Don't let this situation destroy our family." "Our family was destroyed the day you got that letter," she said quietly. "We just haven't admitted it yet." That night, I sat in Sarah's old bedroom, surrounded by 23 years of memories. Her soccer trophies on the shelves, photos of friends and family on the bulletin board, the quilt I'd made for her 16th birthday still folded at the foot of her bed. This was my daughter's room, regardless of genetics. This was the child I had worried about during late-night fevers, celebrated with at graduation, cried with during her first heartbreak. Robert found me there at midnight, crying into one of Sarah's old stuffed animals. "I've ruined everything," I told him. "I was so focused on finding our biological daughter that I forgot to protect the daughter we actually raised." "We both made mistakes," he said, sitting down next to me on the bed. "We got caught up in the novelty of the situation. We forgot that Sarah was going through this too, that she was just as confused and scared as we were. What do we do now?" "We fight for our family," he said. "The family we built, not the one genetics says we should have had." The next morning, I called Jessica and asked her to meet me for coffee. Just the two of us. She was surprised by the request, but agreed to see me at a small cafe downtown. "Jessica," I said when we sat down with our coffee, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I love you. From the moment I saw you, some part of me recognized you as my daughter. But Sarah is also my daughter. And she's hurting because she thinks I love you more than I love her." Jessica stirred her coffee slowly, not meeting my eyes. "Do you?" The question hung between us like a challenge. "I love you differently," I said finally. I love you the way you love someone you're getting to know, someone you're excited to discover. But I love Sarah the way you love someone who's been part of your soul for 23 years. Those are both real kinds of love, but they're not the same. I understand, Jessica said. And I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace Sarah. I already have parents who love me. I was hoping to add to my family, not replace what I already have. That conversation led to another difficult decision. We scaled back our visits with Jessica and the Kowalskis to once a month instead of every week. I stopped calling Jessica every few days just to check in. We established boundaries that protected the primary relationships that each of us already had. It wasn't easy. Part of me felt like I was abandoning Jessica all over again, choosing Sarah over her just as circumstances had chosen Sarah over her 23 years ago. But I realized that love isn't always about following your heart. Sometimes, it's about protecting the people who have trusted you with theirs. Sarah didn't move to Portland. The job offer fell through, but I think she was relieved. Over the following year, she slowly began to rebuild her confidence in our relationship. We went back to our traditions, our weekly lunches, our long phone conversations about everything and nothing. And gradually, Sarah began to develop her own relationship with Jessica. Not as sisters, exactly, but as two young women who shared a unique and surreal bond. They had lunch together sometimes, without Robert and me. They compared notes about growing up, about the families that had shaped them, about the strange twist of fate that had connected their lives. 2 years later, Sarah called me on a Tuesday evening with news that would change everything again. "Mom," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm pregnant." The baby was born on a snowy February morning. Robert and I were in the delivery room when our grandson took his first breath. And as I looked down at his tiny, perfect face, I felt something settle into place inside me. This child was undeniably ours. Not through genetics or legal documents, but through love and choice and commitment. Sarah named him David, after my father, and when Jessica came to visit him for the first time, bringing a hand-knitted blanket she'd made herself, I watched her hold him with such tenderness that I knew we'd found our way to something that worked. We were an unconventional family, spread across biological and legal lines, but we were still a family. Standing here now, 3 years later, I can say that discovering the truth about Sarah's parentage was both the worst and best thing that ever happened to us. It forced us to confront what family really means, to choose love over genetics, commitment over convenience. I learned that being a mother isn't about giving birth to a child. It's about showing up, day after day, year after year, to love and support, and worry about another human being. I learned that families can be built and rebuilt, that love is elastic enough to stretch in unexpected directions without breaking. Most importantly, I learned that the daughter I raised for 23 years is exactly that. The daughter I raised. Genetics didn't make her mine. Love did. Choice did. 23 years of bedtime stories and birthday parties and teenage arguments and proud moments did. Sarah is still my daughter. Jessica is also my daughter now, in a different but equally real way. David is my grandson, the bridge between all our complicated histories. And Robert is still my partner in navigating this beautiful, messy thing called family. If I could go back to that October morning, when I was worried about birthday cake frosting, would I choose to never open that manila envelope? Some days, I think I would. It would have been easier to live in ignorance, to never have to question the foundation of our family. But most days, I'm grateful for the truth, even though it was painful, because it led us to Jessica, who has enriched our lives in ways I never could have imagined. And it forced Sarah and me to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of choice rather than assumption, which has made us stronger than we ever were before. The truth is that family isn't about bloodlines or genetics or who you happen to share DNA with. Family is about who shows up for you, who chooses to love you not just when it's easy, but when it's complicated and difficult and scary. Family is about the people who hold your hand in the hospital and celebrate your victories and mourn your losses and believe in your dreams even when you've stopped believing in them yourself. I have 2 daughters now, and they're both exactly where they're supposed to be. One was given to me by chance and choice, and 23 years of daily love. One was given to me by genetics and fate, and the decision to open our hearts wide enough to include her. Both of them have made me a better person, a better mother, a better human being. And that manila envelope that started this whole journey? I keep it in my desk drawer now, not as a reminder of what we lost, but as a reminder of what we gained. Sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that have to be built twice.